Hello and welcome everyone to the Graduate and Early Careers webinar with Bayer. We were just having a couple of connectivity issues, so please bear with us if there's a few people joining slightly later, or as I say, if we're kind of working with the functionality of the technology that we have available. We do have people on the call, but there might be a little bit of an issue around who can hear us and who can't, but we will do our best to work around that. But welcome, thank you very much for joining. Hopefully you can hear and see us okay. We have a chat function available, so you should see, I think there's a little ribbon at the bottom of your screen with a chat function. So if you load that up, I think for me it's in the bottom right, but it may be on the ribbon for people. If you load that up, then you should be able to kind of follow along with everything that we're saying, and we can, as I say, communicate on there. For those that are watching, we absolutely would love to hear from you throughout this session. Hopefully what we're going to try and do, as I say, there might be a little bit of connectivity issues, but we're going to try and use the kind of opportunity today to ask our kind of current graduates at Bayer some questions, and answer your questions as well. So as I say, please do use the chat and the questions function. Would be really good, as we'd love to hear from you. In terms of what to expect from today, we are, as I say, going to do a little bit of an introduction. As I say, we'll see how this goes, because as I say, we've had a few connectivity issues, but we'll try and do a little bit of an introduction with the Bayer grads and the staff who are on the call. We then have some questions that we're going to ask to our kind of Bayer team about what life is like at Bayer, some of the things that hopefully you're keen on hearing and finding out about. And then again, at the end, we're going to use the questions that you've submitted via the chat and the questions function to kind of answer a load of your questions. So please do drop questions in. I can see there are already a few coming in from David and Precious, so thank you very much for that. Please do keep questions coming in, and we'll do our best to answer those at the end. We'll also do a little bit of a run through of what the application process is, and hopefully, as I say, answer any questions and debunk any myths about that as well. So that's a little bit of what to expect. As I say, we'll do our best with the connectivity, so please bear with us, but we will kind of get started now. I think so. As I say, we've got a number of people kind of on the call from Bayer. I think we've got a couple of the grads hopefully joining in a moment, but I can see we've got Katie and James. So to start off with, we have Faye Harper, who's the talent acquisition lead. So I will let Faye introduce herself now.
Thank you, Ollie. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Yes, so as Ollie said, I'm talent acquisition lead at Bayer for UK and Ireland. So I've been with Bayer for nearly 9 years in the talent acquisition team, a number of roles. So I deal with any of recruitment issues that we have at Bayer, any recruiting new roles that come through. The first point of call will come to me. And working quite closely with GTI as the liaison between GTI and then our hiring teams for any of the grad and year in industry roles. So nice to meet you.
Fantastic, thank you, Faye. We're going to try and go over to Jodie. I don't know, Jodie, if you can hear us. There were a few, excuse me, a few connectivity issues, but Jodie, can you hear us at the moment? Okay, doesn't look like it. As I say, we might have to bear with. I don't know, Jodie, if you can hear us, if you're able to kind of drop something in the chat or come off mute and respond. Okay, it might be that we're having a few issues there, but I think hopefully Claire, the connectivity was okay from your side. if that works. So yeah, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Jodie Taylor. I'm one of the HR partners here at Bayer, as well as my role as an HR business partner. I also work alongside Claire Stones and Faye Harper, looking after the Future Talent Programme. Hi everyone, nice to meet you and welcome to the webinar.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Jodie. As I say, I think we might be having a little bit of an issue there, but nice to introduce yourself. And then last but not least, Claire, if you're able to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Claire Stones. I've worked for Bayer for nearly 7 years now in the talent acquisition team in a number of roles, and recently I have also joined the HR operations team. So I work alongside Faye with all of the recruitment, onboarding and first day, various first day information. I also deal with the graduate schemes and apprentice schemes as well, alongside Faye. On HR operations side, I've recently joined this year after my return from maternity leave, so I've been learning the ropes in terms of supporting any new starters and all employees with any queries they may have. Thanks very much, Ollie.
Wonderful. Thanks, Claire. Going to try and ask Katie to introduce her.
Hi, I'm not really sure if you can hear me as I've got no sound, but I'm Katie and I'm a year in industry student from the University of Bath studying maths. I am doing the Statistics and Data Insights placement. So yeah, thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Katie. And then last but not least, I'm going to see if we can get James to introduce himself as well. Again, sorry, just bear with us because I think there's a bit of an issue with Jodie, Katie and James being able to hear us speak, so we're just having to kind of...
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can, but I don't...
Yes, so I'm James, and I'm currently doing the Route to Market graduate programme. My placement is in 2 different areas of Bayer. So the first 9-month rotation is in the customer marketing function in consumer health, and then the second is in supply chain in the pharmaceutical division. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, James. So we've got, as I say, a mix of the sort of HR and graduate recruitment team, and as well as a couple of the grads. We might have to play it by ear in terms of kind of speaking for those on the call and typing for those that can't hear us, but we'll make our way through that regardless. But thank you very much to everyone for introducing yourself. We have a quick video here just around who Bayer are. So Amy, I think if you're able to play that video just as a bit of an introduction to Bayer.
We're visionaries, driven to solve the world's toughest challenges and striving for a world where health for all, hunger for none, is no longer a dream, but a real possibility. We're doing it with energy, curiosity, and sheer dedication, always learning from unique perspectives of those around us, expanding our thinking, growing our capabilities, and redefining impossible. There are so many reasons to join us, but if you're hungry to build a varied and meaningful career in a community of brilliant and diverse minds to make a meaningful difference, there's only one choice. Be you. Be you. Be Bayer.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that, Amy. It's a little bit cheesy and a little bit corporate, but I think there's a lot of elements within that I think really are embodied at Bayer. We strive to kind of live and certainly embed in the recruitment process the life values that I think there were a number of those mentioned there as well, and we'll kind of touch upon some of those I think for the call today, but certainly that kind of message of be you, be Bayer. I know potentially Faye and Claire, we have a number of kind of networks of and communities at Bayer that allow everyone to kind of express themselves and find a like-minded individuals, I guess, at Bayer. I think it's one of the benefits of it being a larger company is that there are so many opportunities to kind of get involved in lots of different ways. And as I say, I'm sure there's something that we can talk about with regards to some of those networks later on. But yeah, really appreciate the video there, and hopefully gives a little bit of a snapshot of some of the stuff that we'll get into in a moment. I thought I would start off just by talking about the roles that we have available this year. So some of you may already have seen the roles that are available on our application portal, but we have 5 roles available in total this year. We have 3 kind of graduate level roles, so for those that have finished university, and then 2 year in industry or placement roles that will form, I guess, part of the kind of the sandwich course for many of you. We'll come on to the placement roles in a second, but I just wanted to give a brief overview of the kind of graduate roles as well. So the consumer health sales and marketing role, unsurprisingly, is based within the consumer health division of Bayer, and that's I think we'll try to sort of sum it up. Obviously, it's quite tricky to sum up an entire job spec into a one-liner, but you know, it's a project-based role. There's lots of different kind of activities and projects that we're involved with within that kind of graduate role. There's a lot of liaising with different individuals, so both inside and outside of Bayer, kind of cross-functional teams within Bayer, and liaising with some external suppliers as well, around how you can kind of drive the reach, if you like, of some of Bayer's consumer products, so B to C, if you like, as opposed to B to B. Really interesting role, and as I say, there's kind of, you'd be working on a lot of different things at one time, so I think suits people who are maybe quite flexible and enjoy sort of rotating around different projects rather than working on one thing individually. The patient access graduate role that we have is an interesting role, kind of looking a lot at industry trends, if you like, and a lot around sort of policy, and particularly regarding to the kind of the government policy and the NHS policy, and looking at how you can kind of summarize that information and help to communicate that to the different teams within Bayer to help kind of inform their sort of, you know, practices. As I say, some of them, it might be marketing practices, it might be sales, it might be crop science, etc. Looking at how we can how we can try and communicate what's happening in the industry and within government policy around the business, basically. So a really interesting role there, and certainly you know, I think suits people who are able to or enjoy sort of politics, learning about policy, etc. Just with regards to the slides, by the way, with the moderators, I'll kind of move things forward and backwards, so I'll handle that if that's okay. And then the last kind of graduate role we have, certainly last but not least, is sales and marketing operations. So within the, I guess, marketing sphere, as with the consumer health, within the sales and marketing sphere, this one there's an opportunity to do kind of 3 rotations, if you like, 3 placements, one of which kind of culminates working actually for one of Bayer's brands. So a really good opportunity to sort of really get your teeth stuck into a specific brand and work within that to help kind of you know, raise the profile of that brand and increase the reach. As I say, unlike maybe the sort of consumer health role where you'd be working on a few different things at one time, the 6-month placement within that brand, you'd have the opportunity to really be able to kind of see your work you know, impact one area a lot. You'd also be doing a data based rotation and an integrated multi-channel marketing rotation as part of that. So a really good opportunity within that role to kind of see a lot of different areas that help kind of make up the sales and marketing operations function, really. Obviously, we have full details of the full job specs over on our sort of application portal. So please do go to that site. We've got a link at the end of this presentation, and there's a link over on Target Jobs for anyone that's come from there. You can see obviously the full spec of each of those roles to have a little bit more of a deep dive, but hopefully a bit of an intro there as to the type of roles we have available. On the other side, for those of you that are attending that are placement students, we have two roles here. So one is in consumer health. Again, it's a rotational role, and one that works again within the sort of consumer facing side of the Bayer business as opposed to the business facing side. The opportunity here, again, it's a role that requires kind of a lot of communication and liaising with different suppliers, different stakeholders as well. So I think, again, suits someone who is comfortable with that sort of communication style as well, and a really good opportunity to kind of find out about how that relationship works, if you like, between Bayer as the supplier and the businesses that stock kind of Bayer's products, really. So again, another really interesting role there within obviously the placement being a year as opposed to the grad role being longer. And then again, we have a placement role within the sales and marketing operations function. This role is a little bit more kind of data focused, so really suits people who are comfortable with handling a lot of numerical data and drawing insights from that. So a lot of data that comes into Bayer around how consumers are kind of interacting with their products, what the supply and the demand is like. There's a lot of analysis that obviously needs to be done on that to help kind of feed back to the business to help inform decisions going forward. So that's, I think, a really good opportunity for a placement student who is after perhaps a little bit more of a numerically focused role, but understanding how that analysis takes place within a business context, really. So really interesting, really useful opportunity there as well. So hopefully a nice kind of wide breadth of roles to choose for both those looking at permanent graduate roles and those looking for that 12-month placement as well. But if you do have kind of any further questions on those, please do drop them in the chat or on the question function, and hopefully we can try and sort those and answer any questions there. We'll hopefully have a chance to speak to some of the HR team and some of the grads to do that. I can see hopefully we've got a few more people joining now. Maybe some of those issues are a little bit easier. So thanks very much for bearing with us, and thank you to everyone who's joined. Looks maybe via phone potentially. So yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm seeing some smiles, and that means that what I'm saying is being heard, which is good. Fantastic. So next stage in this kind of talk, I thought I'd just run through the application process briefly for those who are perhaps a little bit unsure of what to expect. Again, we'll cut over to the grads as to how you all found this application process. Hopefully nothing too scary. But the first stage is fairly straightforward, I guess, is a sort of CV, an online application. So you can log into the Bayer application portal, and as I say, there'll be a link for that at the end of the presentation. And as I say, if you go on to Target Jobs, you'll be able to find the appropriate link to apply for these roles. You log into that, fill out some key information about yourself, things like your kind of details of your studies, details of address, etc., things that we kind of need to capture for the application. And then there'll be 3 competency-based questions on Bayer and the role that you're applying for. So do make sure that you do your research around who Bayer are. There's lots of information out there on social media, on Bayer's website, in the news. So hopefully lots of really good sources to be able to kind of inform your application and make you stand out. Once you've completed that, if you're successful, you'll be invited through to a telephone interview. This will be with a member of our team. And again, we'll just be asking a couple of questions around your understanding of Bayer, and particularly looking to delve into why it is that you want to join. Obviously, we really want to recruit people who are passionate about the area that you've applied to, and so that's what the telephone interview will be assessing. And then the last stage is a kind of assessment centre, or a final stage interview. So as you can see, we've only got the 3 stages. So I know there's a lot of grad recruitment processes that have kind of 5-6 different stages. As you said, with us it's just 3. So with the assessment centre, it does vary slightly for graduates as opposed to placement student applications. For graduates, it's a kind of, again, a bit of a rotational day. So you'd be involved with a written exercise, a presentation, and a group exercise as well, and there's an interview as part of that. With placement students, it would be an interview and then a sort of work-based task. Obviously, it varies from stream to stream, so a little bit less of a kind of full day rotational process for the placement students versus with the grads, but both of those would involve kind of coming to Bayer's offices, which I'm sure the team will be able to attest to. Certainly from my perspective, a pretty swish. There's seems to be a coffee maker within kind of 5 meters of wherever you are on the floor, I think. So a nice little perk of working at Bayer is you get some pretty fancy offices over in Reading. So that's a bit of a quick run through of what to expect as part of the application process. Again, if you do have any questions on that, please do drop them in the chat or on the questions function. We, as I say, we'll come to those at the end of the session. So we are now at the point where we will ask a couple of questions. I'm just going to flick back because I think we've got a few people who have now joined and hopefully who can hear us properly. So I think, Grace, it looks like there's 2 heads on the screen, and I don't want to guess who's who. So if you 2 could introduce yourself, I'm hoping one of you's Grace.
Yeah, I'm Grace.
Fantastic. If you guys wouldn't mind just introducing yourself briefly, kind of what your role is at Bayer, how long you've been there, that would be great.
Fab. So I'm Grace, as we've just said, and I'm the Sales and Marketing Operations graduate for this year. So I joined Bayer in September, along with the other graduates. My role, if this is what you're asking, Ollie, is really to support the other brand teams and the other functions within Bayer, which is actually brilliant. So at the minute, I'm the LinkedIn campaign manager for Bayer UK. So I'm working along the other brand teams to kind of co-create and approve content to share. My other part of my role is really based on customer experience and supporting the CX strategy for the UK. And for this is really collaborating with our global partners in Germany to kind of improve the workflows we have for surveys, which basically means collecting better data in a much faster way. And this is a really fun part of my job because the UK is one of the leading markets for Bayer. So it's kind of fun to be coming up with ideas on the spot and seeing them come into fruition. But yeah.
Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you. And Natalie, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Natalie. Just jumped onto Grace's feed because we had a few connectivity issues. But yeah, it's really nice to meet you all. And I am currently the oncology marketing graduate. So I work I will eventually work across oncology brands, but at the moment I work with the 2 prostate cancer brands that we have at Bayer. And I'm also a graduate from this cohort, so I also started along with Grace in September, and my role essentially is supporting the management of our prostate cancer brands. We work with healthcare professionals on kind of education and promoting our brands, and we work to go to a lot of conferences and to kind of educate and kind of disseminate data and so on around our brands and so on. So yeah, it's really nice to meet you all.
Wonderful, fantastic, thank you. And then I think we've now got James and Katie, I think, as well. So hopefully, yeah, there you go. This is how it should be working, is that I can say something and then people respond rather than typing. So James, I think you already introduced yourself, I think. So just for the sake of time, Katie, if it's all right. And Katie, in fact, did you introduce yourself as well, I think?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, in which case, just for the sake of time, we'll move on because I'm not sure we've heard from Sophie. But Sophie, if you can hear us, okay?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I can hear you. Thanks,
Please
Ollie.
Great.
As you say, I am Sophie Pettigrew. I am actually, I think, one of the I'm a previous grad. I joined Bayer in 2021 on the 2021 cohort as the older version of Natalie. So she set it up nicely in terms of what the oncology marketing graduate program does here at Bayer, but now I've transitioned off of that program and now I'm in a full-time position here in the company as a brand manager in oncology. So I primarily manage the prostate cancer products that we have. And I kind of, in terms of being a brand manager, you have the vision for your brand, the vision for your product, and your job is essentially to set the strategy and the tactics that go under that to achieve success and treat as many patients as possible. So that's a snapshot of what I do, and I'm happy to take any questions in terms of like what happens in the transition from your graduate program afterwards or towards the end of your graduate program.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a great kind of segue, I suppose, into the in many ways, I guess the purpose of certainly the grad roles and the placement roles as well. Obviously, with the difference being with the placement roles is obviously a year back at university, but with all of our early careers roles, we try and give, I guess, a real flavour of what it's like to work at Bayer, hopefully to set up for a long-term career here. So it's great to hear from you, Sophie, about that kind of journey. And yeah, I guess Natalie, probably worth taking notes and finding out a few details as to what that looks like in a year or two's time. But thank you very much for introducing yourself. And again, big thank you for the flexibility. I know there's been a few technical issues, but I think hopefully should be working as expected. So we'll just get started with a couple of kind of, I guess, standard questions before we can look to, I guess, answer a couple of the questions that are coming in on the chat. So please do keep typing them away, and we'll get to those just after we've covered a couple of these more standard questions. So I guess probably I'm going to, if it's all right, kind of Natalie and Sophie, maybe steer away from the oncology side of things, just because obviously that's not a role that we're kind of advertising this year. But I think, Grace, you mentioned being involved in kind of sales and marketing operations. So maybe one more for Grace, James, and Katie, if you're able to kind of talk a little bit about the sort of streams that you're involved in, and just to give a bit of a flavour of some of the day-to-day activities, just to kind of bring the roles to life a bit more, if that's okay. So we'll start with James, if that's okay.
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, that's coming through okay.
Yeah, so I don't believe my role is being advertised for in this year, but day to day, for me, it's very varied. So within my team, there's things involved with retailers, so with Tesco, Boots and Superdrug, and helping to activate our Bayer brands within those retailers in different ways. So that could be producing leaflets or promos and things like that. But then it can also range to research projects. So recently I've helped to manage a project into vitamins and nutritionals. So I'd say that across the board on the roles that we have at Bayer, the graduate roles and the placements, there's quite a varied day to day. So it's not the same thing all the time.
Wonderful. And actually, I think while it may be that there's a different sort of focus. I think certainly a lot of what you've said through speaking to hiring managers around that kind of liaising with brands, and particularly, as you say, some of the big names there like Tesco, Boots, etc. Excuse me. There's certain elements of a lot of the streams that we have advertised this year that involve a lot of those activities. So thanks very much for bringing that to life. And Katie, over to you. What is it that you're involved with at Bayer?
So I'm in the clinical statistics team. So my role can vary depending on what year and like what tasks and projects we have ongoing. One of my really interesting tasks so far has actually been for one of our heart failure drugs, and it's like a self-administered questionnaire, and my job is to work out the threshold of when patients notice the difference in their improvement. So it's really interesting, and I program in a lot of different languages like SAS, Python and R, and different ones for different projects. And what's really interesting about my job is that I can get pledged, so results, I will be one of the first people to know the results if a drug has worked, which is really exciting. So you might have to, yeah, that's what I do basically. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. And it may be that, you know, particularly for the SMO placement role, I think, as I say, from memory, was a lot of kind of data analysis, and it sounds like certainly from the analysis of, you know, the questionnaires that you've mentioned there, there could be, I think Katie might be a good person to ask about what some of that information analysis looks like within Bayer. So again, if there's anyone that's kind of interested in that SMO placement role or the data side of some of the roles that we've discussed, do kind of jot questions down for Katie. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot there, Katie, but we'll come back to those in a minute. And then Grace, if you wouldn't mind, just, I know you gave a little bit of an outline earlier, but just a quick kind of run through of the SMO role that you're doing and that we have advertised this year.
Yeah, sorry for jumping the gun earlier, Ollie. Yeah, so a little bit on what I said earlier in terms of, at the minute, I'm doing LinkedIn campaigns. I think with my sales and marketing operations program, it's very variable because you're not working directly under a brand team. It means you're supporting all their functions. So one day, you know, I'm looking at LinkedIn campaigns, I'm working what type of content gets the best feedback. I'm analysing data, I'm feeding it back to the brand teams to see what we can change. And then the next day, I'm working with the global team. We're looking at CX surveys, how we can improve user experience. So when I say user, I'm talking about healthcare professionals. So it really changes. So that's the best bit about the graduate scheme, is you're always doing different things every day. And that's definitely a positive of this SMO scheme. I would like to highlight that my one currently doesn't have any rotations. However, I've seen the one online does. So that will be a little bit of a different experience for you guys. Again, kind of leading on to what Katie's saying, Bayer's moving to a more of a digital data-led approach. And that's super exciting for anyone that wants to get their hands in it. It's just one of those cross-functional skills, really. But yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I know when we were speaking to the managers and drawing up this year's program, I think they absolutely wanted to keep that element of, you know, variation. And I think, you know, having 3 sort of 6-month rotations within that is able to kind of keep the that element of being involved in a lot of different areas, whilst, as you say, I think particularly for the last one, you know, having a brand placement, certainly the way it was described is that, you know, looking to kind of build up those foundational skills and then almost apply them in that kind of brand placement at the end. So thank you very much for giving a bit of a flavour there. As you say, with the caveat that actually the structure of it's changing, but hopefully the kind of the essence of it is remaining the same, I think. So thank you very much, everyone there. I guess we'll cross over now maybe to Natalie and Sophie. Bit of a general question and maybe a tricky one, but I think good to get kind of 2 different perspectives, I suppose. Natalie, someone who's maybe, you know, still a little bit earlier in the sort of journey, if you like, and Sophie is someone who's kind of been through the graduate program and come out the other side. What would you say kind of life is like at Bayer in a general sense? Again, we'll kind of remove the role element from this and just sort of talk about what it's like to work at Bayer generally. So maybe Natalie first, if that's okay.
Sure. I found my first few months at Bayer to be really, really great. Everyone from day one was super welcoming, and always there to support with kind of whatever you need, like whether there's somebody who's super senior in the business or someone who's more earlier in their career, like I am, like everybody across the spectrum is always willing to help, willing to kind of go for a coffee, have a catch up, talk to you about their career and so on. So that's been a really amazing part of starting at Bayer. The other thing I would say about the graduate scheme, which I found really great, is that there's a lot of opportunity, and you get kind of more exposure to people in the wider people in the business as part of the program. So we have kind of we have sessions talking about career development. We have sessions where leaders in the business will come in and talk to us, and not only does that give us kind of insight into future steps in our career, it's also really good to be able to meet people and kind of get our names out, really. So we're really set up for the future of our careers, and hopefully take further steps at Bayer. So yeah, I found starting at Bayer to be really, really supportive and a great environment.
Fantastic, thank you. And Sophie, just before I come to you, I might just invite Claire, Faye, or Jodie to build on some of that, the more structural element, I suppose, to the kind of grad program, the placement program around, some of those opportunities that you mentioned there, Natalie, of networking opportunities, some training ideas. Would it be all right for one of you just to kind of talk through some of those elements a little bit more, if that's all right, just to give a picture of what people can expect when joining in the early careers functions? I don't want to pick on anyone, but I can see Jodie's.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so just to build on that, as well as coming in and doing your role on a day-to-day basis within your team, there's also a development program that sits around the graduate scheme and the year in industry scheme. So as well as you're on the job day-to-day activities and roles within your teams, you'll also be part of a development program. So as it's been shared already, there'll be sessions on personal development, which will cover a whole host of different areas, and that will sit throughout your 18-month graduate program, as well as the personal development piece and the day-to-day on-the-job learning piece. You will also have the opportunity to visit other sites. So we'll do a visit to our Bayer Crop Science site in Cambridge. You'll also have the opportunity to do warehouse visits. So we really do try and give you as much exposure as we possibly can to different areas of the business and different people within the business. You'll also have opportunities to meet some of the support functions. So you'll spend some time with legal, with finance, with HR, just really getting an understanding of what your part of the business does, but how that then fits with the wider business and how we all come together as one. I don't know, Faye or Claire, if you've got anything that you want to add.
Sorry, do you want? I haven't got anything to add further to that at the moment, unless you do, Claire. So I'm busy trying to answer questions.
No, that was great,
Jodie, if I'm being honest.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Jodie. It sounds like you did a very comprehensive job there, and I think hopefully, at least from my perspective, demonstrates the kind of commitment, both in terms of time and some of the kind of financial commitment to put on these training sessions that Bayer demonstrates to its kind of early careers staff. It's not easy, and it's not something that you'd necessarily find at every organization, to have that level of structure and involvement, as part of your role, not necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but that kind of support network, as Natalie mentioned, and some of the sessions that are put on, etc. It doesn't just happen by magic. So kudos to the team, and hopefully, as Natalie has mentioned, gratefully appreciated by the grad. So a really good opportunity, kind of outside of some of the day-to-day stuff that we're discussing as well. And then Sophie, I guess, kind of to get the perspective of kind of maybe post graduate role, what life is like at Bayer in a more senior capacity, would be great to kind of hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, just building off what Natalie says, it's highly collaborative, and it's still collaborative. I mean, beyond the graduate program, everyone works in a very similar way. Bayer very much have you as a graduate because of your opinion, and they very much value your opinion. So, you know, you don't just come into it as a typical graduate. You come into very much as a role in the team, as a valued member in the team, which is really, really great. Big on accountability and big on having that leadership. So from the get-go, you sort of get thrown in the deep end. You're learning on the job, and you take accountability in your projects, and that comes all the way through the graduate program, and that comes into, you know, your roles here at Bayer. I mean, in terms of other, you know, culture and stuff, they're also big on supporting you in your development. I mean, during my time as a graduate, but also coming off of the graduate program, I got put in a lot of kind of courses to do with marketing in the industry and leadership and project management, in terms of taking that. And that was me as a grad, but also had a lot of other people in Bayer across the board on it. So they really, really invested in my development and in other graduates' development. I've also, I've completed a mini MBA. I've done a diploma. So, and this has all been supported by Bayer. So it's, you know, they've really invested into your development, not just as a grad, but continuing into more official roles. So you know, that culture is really, really there. Yeah, I mean, it's very much learning by doing. And as I said, I even now coming off the graduate program, the treatment is very similar. So they very much prep you from the get-go to be a valued opinion in the team and to take accountability in whatever projects you're going to be doing. And that transfers throughout the graduate program, transfers to what I'm doing now.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you, Sophie. Really appreciate that. The next question, I'm going to kind of whiz through, if that's all right, because I'm conscious we want to leave a little bit of time at the end. But the application process, as I say, we've tried to keep it kind of fairly straightforward. I know, actually, from memory, I remember seeing certainly Natalie, James and Grace at last year's assessment centres, and I mean, you're still here, which I'm taking to be a good sign, and that the application process was not too horrific. But we've tried to make efforts to kind of keep it as straightforward as possible and as clear cut from an applicant perspective as possible. You know, as I say, we're aware that there's a lot of processes out there that involve, you know, 5, 6, 7 different steps and can be quite tough. So hopefully we try to kind of condense that. And I think, you know, maybe if it's all right, James, just to get your perspective quickly on kind of what that assessment centre was like in terms of the ability to maybe get to know what Bayer is like, as you know, I'm sure you've learned lots more about what it's like to work at Bayer since being there, but actually, you know, on the day itself, what was your perspective in terms of finding out about Bayer and learning about what it might be like to work there?
Yeah. So I think mainly it's a very good opportunity for people that are wanting to join Bayer to learn about if they'd be a good fit for Bayer. I know for me it definitely was that, and it was a very positive experience, very relaxed day. I think if I was to give any advice for anyone on the assessment days, it would just to be yourself and to be relaxed, because that's how you can put across the best version of yourself, and how you can also see if your authentic self will match with Bayer. But overall, as you said, Ollie, there's so many application processes out there that can be far too complicated, but nice and straightforward and simple and really relaxed. And on the assessment day as well, you're made to feel really at home and really welcome.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to remove the proverbial gun that's on James's head there and say thank you for some positive feedback at the assessment centre. I promise that was not a staged answer, but yeah, certainly I think we try and make as much of an effort as possible. I know Claire, Faye and Jodie will echo this, to kind of give an honest view of what it's like to work at Bayer. I don't think we think there's a great deal of benefit in trying to kind of sugarcoat things. And as James said there, we kind of hope that the same is true of applicants. Ultimately what we're looking for is a really good match, and we recognize that not everyone will be best suited to Bayer, and Bayer won't necessarily be suited to everyone. And so hopefully in the recruitment process, we've tried to kind of make that as honest and as clear as possible. And as you say, things like the sort of final assessment, where you actually get to come in, things like this, where you get to chat to Bayer graduates, hopefully give a really kind of honest representation of what it's like to work at Bayer. And ultimately we're kind of looking for that good match, really. And you actually preempted the last question, James, which is you're clearly psychic, but I guess just an open question for everyone else, all of the other grads. Do you have any other kind of little snippets of advice for people who are looking to kind of apply to Bayer? Any pearls of wisdom?
I can go for it. Yeah. My biggest piece of advice, I suppose, would be echoing firstly what James said, just be yourself. I think that's really what everyone wants to see. And the more you're yourself, the better you'll kind of come across and the more confident you'll be. The second thing I would say is do your research. There's loads of information about Bayer as a company online and like the roles you'll go into. And so the more you can kind of go in understanding what the role is that you're applying to and the company that you're applying to, the better you'll come across and the more prepared you'll come across. And I think that really shows a kind of effort and preparation on your part, and so will be valued pretty highly in the application process. So yeah, I think that would serve you pretty well going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just following on from what Natalie just said, 100% do your research. You have to be passionate. I feel Bayer is very driven on passion. So when you're applying, be sure you know why you're applying, because they can read it from across the room. As well, I'd say don't forget, your own personal feelings. So I'm not saying go into your assessment centre challenging everyone, but sometimes it's nice for, Bayer and colleagues to kind of understand why you're interested. So let's say, for example, in my application process, I think I challenged one of the one of my mentors or whoever is interviewing me in a comfortable challenge, but it led to some really interesting conversations and kind of helped me understand a little bit more about where Bayer sits in the situation. So yeah, don't forget to bring yourself into the room.
Absolutely. And I think just to kind of jump in on that, almost coming back to that point around it being we're after a good match, it's a two-way street. We recognize that obviously there's a lot of people that are applying for these roles, but it also needs to be something that's right for you. And I guess the reason behind running this kind of webinar, that we've obviously got the email address that you can email with any questions, and trying to create that opportunity for you to find out more and find out if it's right for you as well. So I think that's a really good point there, Grace. I'm just going to whiz ahead because I'm conscious we've only got 10 minutes left, and we've got a lot of questions that have come in. So I can see there's a few questions that we've had around kind of which roles would suit people best and which degree backgrounds would be most relevant. The thing that I'd say is on all of the roles advertised on targetjobs and advertised on our application portal, we have our kind of eligibility criteria for them. At the very bottom of the role, there's a section called Who Are We Looking For? And with each of the roles, we have the details of which degree disciplines are open. We do have a number of roles that are open to any degree discipline. So, we've done that quite deliberately because we feel as though the criteria for success, if you like, in these roles is often not necessarily tied to a particular subject. It's about a lot of the things that our grads have been saying today around kind of, willing to do research, willing to be curious, how well you're able to work as a team. I know there's a lot of talk so far around kind of working across teams within Bayer. And so there's a lot of those skills that we feel can come from any different degree. So I've seen, I think, a couple of people who are from a law background, some from an engineering background. And as I say, we welcome applications from you for the roles that are any degree discipline. I think from memory, it's the two SMO roles where we're looking perhaps at a little bit more of a technically minded candidate candidate there, just because there's a little bit more kind of data analysis involved there. So I think kind of, again, the full details of it are on the website and the application portal, but there's a STEM focus for candidates there, as well as I think kind of geography, business studies as well. So a little bit more of a kind of numerical focus for the two SMO roles, I think. But as I say, full details of kind of what to what degrees relate to which role are available online as well. So I think there are a few questions that kind of covered that off. I think we had a couple that there's one here from Philippos, I think, that said, like to know if these programs offer the opportunity to collaborate with other Bayer affiliates around the world, or if they're only focused on Bayer's UK operations. So again, maybe an open question to the grads. Have you had much involvement with kind of international colleagues from Bayer?
Hi, so I'll just take that first. As I'm actually employed globally, so all of my interactions essentially are abroad normally. So I work with a lot of people in Germany. So in my day, I normally be talking to at least a couple of people a day from Germany or anywhere. Not to say that I don't have contact with people in the UK. I do. I still come to the office like 3 days a week. We do still things as a group, but we all work with lots of other countries. Great opportunity to meet other people from other countries. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, just following on that. When I'm UK employed, and I was UK employed as a graduate. But even then, I work with people kind of all over the world. I work with people in Australia. I work with people in the global office in Germany, in America, in Canada, and even as a graduate, I was involved in international events. So I would go abroad to these events or abroad to these working groups as well. So there's lots of opportunities to work both cross-functionally at Bayer UK, but also with lots of global roles and get insights for what it's like in different countries as well. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Sophie. And hopefully, again, echoing the points of Natalie and Grace of kind of do your research, you'll be able to see quite how global an organization like Bayer is, and it's really cool to hear about how that plays out within all roles, not just senior roles, but the early careers roles as well. There's that kind of global reach and global communication there as well. So thank you, everyone there. Had a question from Mariam, who said studying law, but currently studying masters in project management. What is it that you'd like to see on an applicant's CV? So I might start this one, and then potentially Faye, Claire, Jodie, if you wanted to jump in. For us, the CV forms part of the recruitment, but we're ultimately, I think, assessing and looking for your answers to those competency questions and then the telephone interview questions. Clearly, there's going to be some overlap in terms of obviously the experience that you've built up that you'll put on a CV, but ultimately we're looking for how you can apply that experience into a Bayer context, if you like. So certainly echo that point from Natalie and Grace around making sure you do your research on Bayer. But I think then the really kind of high level applications are the ones who are able to kind of match those two things together, match their experience that they've built up and then apply that in a Bayer context, understand how your maybe your part-time work or your degree studies might then kind of play out within the context of that role. So, again, the sort of data example that we've referred back to for a couple of the kind of SMO roles, try and understand how the experience that you have on your CV potentially as part of your degree, if you're doing some statistical analysis, how that might then marry well with that the job description and the types of activities that you'd be doing at Bayer. So I think that's probably the key thing, as opposed to questions of how you'd structure your CV. It's about kind of applying that experience and knowledge into that sort of Bayer context, I think. I don't know, Faye, Jodie, Claire, if there's any other sort of, any of the life values that you wanted to kind of speak about at this stage as to the things that we're kind of looking for and assessing.
Yeah, you can absolutely. I think anything that is relevant then add to your application. So if you have life values that you practice that come into your current role, current studies, anything that comes into your life that can be reflected on your CV. What we're looking for is the whole thing about, I think what James said and others said earlier is about being you. So we want to, when we see your CV, it's your first point of call for us to see you, is make it real. Let that CV reflect yourself. We want to see you, and so keep it honest, real, and relevant to what you're applying for.
Fantastic. Thank you, Faye. I'm conscious we're running out of time and I want to get through as many questions as possible. So I think Faye answered this one, but just to confirm that the placement roles are paid opportunities. They're, as I say, treated as a role with a fixed term as opposed to the grad roles, which, as I say, are a little bit longer there. Tony asked, what role would you say is most applicable to someone in the pharmaceutical or research side of the field? Again, I suppose in the spirit of kind of being honest about sort of which roles are more suited and less suited to people. I think a lot of these roles are quite kind of business focused. So certainly not that someone from the pharmaceutical or research side couldn't get involved with them, but for transparency, a lot of these roles, as we've discussed, are around the sort of product side of things. So there would be some research required, but it's a little bit more of a focus on how Bayer's products are viewed in the marketplace in a kind of B2C capacity for a lot of these roles. So potentially for sort of pure research roles, there may be some others out there. But again, if you're interested in how that kind of research can be applied in a business context, then absolutely there's some roles here for you as well. So just wanted to kind of cover that one off. I think we had a question from Abigail, and I think there was another one, maybe direct this one to Grace, if that's okay. I think was after a little bit of a distinction around the SMO role versus maybe the kind of consumer health, sales and marketing side of things. Would you be able to kind of delineate those two for us, if that's possible?
Yeah, a little bit limited because obviously I'm the pharmaceutical sales and marketing operations graduate, so I've never worked in consumer health at Bayer. But what I can just say, so we're all on the same level, is that pharmaceutical, like pharmaceutical sector and consumer health are very different within Bayer. So you're working with a whole different portfolio of products. And with those comes different legal compliances, different medical requirements. So you're working in two different environments. So I just want to make that quite clear. From my side, obviously I can speak from it's more limited because it's pharmaceutical products, not over-the-counter medicines, which make up our consumer health. But Ollie, I'm sure you could share the current graduate's email. I'm sure she's fine with that to talk about consumer health, to give, future applicants a little bit of a more insight for that.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think, as you say, that's an important distinction, and maybe kind of what we were referencing about some of the research element for the consumer health, for the sort of more business focused parts, and the kind of product focus as well. I think is maybe part of where that kind of distinction comes from, pharmaceutical versus consumer health. I think that's a bit of a trend throughout the business from memory. So yeah, thank you for kind of clarifying that. There's a question here from Manzi just around where the roles are based. They're based in Reading at Bayer's head office. I think there's some flexibility for hybrid working, but there's an expectation to come into the office. And as I say, having run assessment centres there last year, I can confirm it's a very nice office. It's a nice little perk for when you are working there. Then we had a question from Philippos again, asking about how the activities are structured during the assessment centre. Won't be able to give too much of this away for obvious reasons, but we have, as I say, it's a group activity, a presentation, and then a sort of Q&A opportunities on the day as well, and a tour of the building. So again, we want to try and make it a excuse me, a an opportunity for you to ask questions, to find out more about Bayer, as well as an opportunity for us to be able to find out more about you as well. So there's a presentation that you'll be given in advance and asked to give on the day. There's a group exercise of kind of how you respond to a work-based scenario and work together to kind of come up with recommendations. And then there's a sort of more standard interview as well. So that gives you an idea of kind of what to expect on the day for the graduates. For the placement applications, it will be again a sort of more standard kind of competency interview, and then there'll be a work-based task whereby you'll be kind of presented with some information, and you'll be asked to kind of probably be given a little bit of time to sort of work through that and possibly sort of present back at the end. But as I say, that one varies a little bit more stream to stream as well. So hopefully a bit of an insight into what to expect there. I think that's covered off most of them. As I say, there's a number that have asked about kind of which role would be best suited. My advice there would be to kind of go on, have a look at the job specs, and particularly that kind of degree discipline point. As I say, I think 3 of the 5 roles we have as being open to any degree discipline, and then 2, I think there's a little bit more of a kind of STEM numerical focus to some of the degrees. But do have a look, and as I say, when we say any degree, we really mean any degree. You know, if you're again, can see some biotech students, can see some law students, some engineering students, management students, please do apply, because as I say, we have made that distinction very deliberately as well. I'm conscious we're a couple of minutes over, and I don't want to keep everyone longer than they bargained for. Hopefully covered off most of the questions there. Just a final kind of summary, if you like. We'll be sending this deck round to everyone who has attended today. So these hyperlinks, you don't need to write them down. They'll be coming to you. If you head over to the Bayer Graduates website, you'll be able to register, log in, have a look at the jobs in detail, and decide which of these roles you would like to apply for. If you do have any questions that we weren't able to get to today, please do drop us an email at the Bayer Graduates GTI email address there. We'll be more than happy to kind of follow up with any questions that you do have, and I think that's it. This recording will be sent round as well, so if there's anything that you kind of wanted to hear again from our grads or our team, you'll be able to watch this recording again as well. But I will stop whittering on and say a big thank you to our graduates and our HR team at Bayer. Really appreciate, and I'm sure I speak for everyone, to say a big thank you for providing your insight and your time today. Really, really helpful to kind of bring the roles to life a little bit more. I think then that is it. I think, Amy, you're probably going to end the stream. So just as a quick heads up, you will be kind of booted out once the stream is over. So if you do have any questions or any last minute things, then please do drop us an email to that there. But otherwise, yeah, just a big thank you from me again for attending. And yeah, best of luck with your applications. So thank you very much, everyone, and speak to, I'm sure, a lot of the Bayer team soon, and hopefully see some applications from the grads as well. Thanks very much.